Greetings, everybody. David Avocado Wolf here. Welcome to a kind of an offshoot of Defund the Matrix. As you know from the Defund the Matrix shows, if you've seen those, or as you've seen with Bitcoin and the incoming cryptocurrency revolution, that there is a lot there. There's a lot to learn, and there's a whole world of it. And so what I thought I'd do is I'd bring in my friend Josh Scigala from Australia originally, but now living in Berlin. And he's a real expert. He's an old timer in Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. He's going to try to clear some things up for you, and at the same time tell you what he's up to. And he's got something really cool project that I really want you to hear. And it might take a few times to get it in so that you finally go, oh, okay, I get what he's talking about. Because the more you hear it, the more repetition, the more likely you're to use it, and the more likely you're to realize what an incredible thing it is that this man is doing. Okay, and it's not just one thing. He's doing many things. But with no further ado, Joshua, how are you?
Hey, Avo, man, it's wonderful to be here. I got to say, thank you for the kind introduction.
It's really beautiful here in Texas. We finally survived the Houston summer, which was as crazy as a Canadian winter. I will say that.
Right.
And it's election day. So a lot of chaos in this county and many counties across America. People can't get in to vote. They can't do this. They can't do that. So it's a wild time for these Western democracies, including what's going on in Germany and what's going on in Australia. So I thought maybe we'd start there with the chaos of our times. There's always solutions. And so if you could, tell us some of the solutions that you've created or worked on.
Hey, look, I mean, we're heading towards an absolute nightmare with these CBDCs. It's bondage extraordinaire. Like it's such a control mechanism that we have to do everything possible. And you know, I got into Bitcoin back in late 2010, believe it or not. And the reason why I saw it as so brilliant was because I was already in the whole gold and silver scene. I just, as a technologist, understood very quickly and didn't have that dogma that a lot of gold bugs had. But I got into it because the writing was on the wall that more and more control mechanisms would happen through digital money. And thank God that Satoshi came along and invented Bitcoin when she did, or he or they, because if it didn't happen then, we would already be in a dystopian nightmare control grid social credit score system. And that's coming towards us with these CBDCs, and everyone should be absolutely livid that they're even talking about these things. And this goes along with some of the stuff happening in the US with the Fed instant settlement system that they're talking about. And they're all like, it's not a CBDC, just in case that's got a bad name. It's an instant settlement grid within the Federal Reserve. So, hey, the road to hell is paved with convenience, and really that's what it is. It's like, oh, it's so convenient. It's so wonderful because we can send Alice to Bob and.
Let's just back that up for people at home. It's the CBDC drive that this is the slave move that they want to get us on, which is what they're doing, and it's obvious they're trying to crash Western economies by just perpetuating the Ukraine war. It could have been another war, but they decided it's going to be this one. And so the idea is to crash the economies and then replace, like with a new Bretton Woods agreement, which is like the post-World War II money system that we all grew up in. They wanted to replace it now with a centralized digital bankster currency, CBDC. And that would mean that they can access, for example, your money when it's sitting in your bank account or wherever it is. They can say, hey, we don't like you. You can't spend that money anymore. Or we don't like you. That money's now flagged. These are the problems with the CBDCs. Did I get most of them, or there's probably many others, I'm sure?
No, very, very good points. And I'll tell you why it's actually, because a lot of people will say, well, they can do that now. I mean, if my money's in the bank, they can do that now. What's the difference? Well, the difference is very, very key here. Right now, what happens if I send Avo money through the banking system, it's already bad enough because, first of all, the bank sends a note, a message over to Avo's bank and then credits that. But this happens with many, many banks all day. And then at the end of the day, the records go over to the Fed, and the Fed settle everyone. It means my bank doesn't need to send everything over to the same bank that Avo has, that happened through that day. What they do is they just settle the difference, because some customers in Avo's bank would have sent to some other customers with the bank I use, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is trans-international right now, but
so it's maybe $10,000 one way, 11,000 the other. There's 1,000 left over, and that's the difference that they're settling out.
That's right. That's right. And so what happens there's this obfuscation where you hide all the details. The Fed doesn't know all of the ins and outs and everybody's spending. So this is a very, very key difference, because it's one step away. It's one separation from having total control. Now, that bank has a contract with you to keep your records private. Now, most likely the state's looking in there and they're reporting and stuff. We just assume that, but it's a lot more work. There needs to be subpoenas. There needs to be all sorts of things happening, courts involvement and stuff like that. If you have a centralized settlement system where every transaction is known by the Fed, what happens there, they can start flagging. So, now it's not just a prison thing having lockdowns. Now it's a global normal thing that they can presume, it's this new thing called a lockdown. All of a sudden we have to understand that. And they're going to say, okay, you can only spend your savings within a 1K radius of your house. So if you go outside of that radius, no, it doesn't valid. You can't use it. So the only other thing to do is maybe use cash, and cash is actually king because it's truly anonymous, apart from the serial number. But it's much more anonymous than even crypto is.
That's an interesting direction to go with this conversation, which is they're driving us away from cash. Everybody knows it. We all feel it now. My friend of mine has a website called Canada is Penniless. And that's because Canada doesn't have any pennies, but it's also penniless because they're obviously blowing out their treasury with this Ukraine war and all these other scams that they're basically looting at this point. I think these governments and these politicians are looting and just sending all the money to their friends. And at some point, it's gonna pop and it's gonna crash. So this centralized digital currency is a trap. That's the key. And in order for us to avoid it, we need another entire system, which we have. That's the thing that's so amazing. Yeah. So we could just stick with the cash that we have now. We could stick with the paper dollars that we have now, or even some of the plastic, but we also have crypto. So let's go there and let's talk about what are some of the developments that make crypto really different than centralized digital bankster currency.
Yeah, so crypto is amazing because yes, you also have that traceability, which isn't the best thing. But it's kind of this sort of a Trojan horse that comes in and says, no, look, it's totally transparent. Bitcoin, you can follow everything. And that's what it is. But I feel that what we need is this to then create a mass network effect. And it's already a little bit like that. There's lawmakers are a little bit scared to just ban it outright because of the fact that the network effect is so huge. There's a lot of very wealthy people now that are invested in this technology and companies. And so it's not easy to just switch off. And anyway, they couldn't just switch it off. What they could do is switch off the on and off ramps. They could ban Coinbase and Kraken and stuff. And all that would happen,
places where you can buy cryptocurrencies, right? They can stop that or shut that down, but they can't stop what's already out there.
That's right. And the thing is with cryptocurrency, and this is what a lot of people don't understand in the early days, maybe they do now, is that, and this is why a lot of gold bugs didn't really get it. And I wish they'd maybe listen to me a bit more or something, I don't know. But I've always called it a rare number and rare metals. And rare numbers and rare metals work together. Now, the rare number thing is kind of hard to get your head around because if you're not a mathematician, you can't understand what that even means. But it means it's a number that's very, very hard to find because you have to find that number through a certain puzzle.
It's like really I kind of look at it as it's a three-dimensional puzzle, right? That's basically when you're like mining Bitcoin, you're mining for a three-dimensional puzzle pice. Correct? Is that a good way to understand it?
Absolutely. And not only that, it's a puzzle piece because it has to connect with the piece before it. And that's why a puzzle is a really good analogy, actually, because it has to fit with the puzzle piece before it. And that's why nothing can change back a few blocks before, because if you change something there, then none of the other puzzle pieces fit. It's wacky, but what we have now is true peer-to-peer, permissionless, and that is key.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by permissionless? We don't have to go through like a Swift system. We don't have to go through like a third-party checker.
It's multiple things. It's on a user basis. I don't need to ask anyone. I can download some software and join the network. And then you can send me money without me begging or showing paperwork to a bank to say, please give me an account. No, I just download some software, free and open source, and there it is. And it's voluntary and permissionless in another way, and that's some kid in some grandma's attic in Myanmar could be coding the next best thing and plug it into the Bitcoin network or plug it into the Ethereum network without asking permission. Now, that kid can't go to Visa or MasterCard and plug some cool thing that's subversive into the MasterCard network. It just won't happen. So this is the beautiful thing, especially about Ethereum, because Bitcoin is still, it's very protected by the decentralization, because you can't just upgrade it. This stops the attack surface being able to be grabbed by an adversary, by people, well, governments, big oil,
hostile entities.
Hostile entities, yeah. Adversaries.
Okay, so real quick on that. So when we're dealing with Bitcoin, it's kind of like what I tell people, it's like a runaway program, and it's a puzzle. There's 21 million solutions, and of those, there's really only, I think there's been about 4 million Bitcoin that have never made it onto, they've never come out of a wallet, or they've been lost. So really, we're looking at about 17 million Bitcoin left in the world. And just from that perspective, that's going to be something that's going to be, because it has a brand name recognition, it's going to be something that people go, I want a piece of a Bitcoin. I like a Bitcoin. And that's why I always think Bitcoin's such a hot commodity, because it's got the name behind it. But Ethereum, you're talking about that chain, that's probably a little bit more sophisticated, and a lot more sophisticated, and probably a lot more, you can build on top of it. That's kind of what you're driving at, right?
That's right. I mean, Ethereum is a bunch of, it took what Bitcoin did and said, hey, why can't we, instead of just sending money around, why can't we program, have programs that are decentralized? So this is where the idea of a smart contract comes from. And the only difference between a smart contract and a computer program really is that a smart contract has to execute on at least 51% of the network have to come out with the same output. What does this mean? It means if my computer right here is dealing with money and making financial decisions, I have to trust that no hacker or virus is in this machine, because it's making financial decisions, right? So I say, send money in, and if this is done, then send the money out, right? Some sort of basic program. The problem is, if I have to, if this has got a virus or a hacker's hacked in there, then if I send money in, a job's done, then send money to the hacker, right? So you don't want that. So what the difference is with a smart contract is the same program runs on thousands of computers, and the network says, okay, at least 51% said send the money here, so that's where the money's going to go, because a hacker can't hack every single one of these machines. And it's usually 99.999% of the machines that say send the money here. That's how amazing.
Right. It's never 51%. It's always 99.99%. And right. Therefore, the smart contract revolution is been a major part of crypto, I'd say, since probably, what do you think, 2017? That's when it really started?
Yeah, 2016, 17. Yep, that's right. And it's quite amazing. But also, things like NFTs have been around on Bitcoin for a long time. They were called colored coins before, because you would color in one coin and follow it around the network. And people made whole protocols. In fact, there was a kid that made a lock that you could send as an Airbnb host to your crypto wallet to unlock your key, the house. using just signing a signature with the Bitcoin wallet using a color coin. And then once you've left the house, you just send the color coin back to the house owner. So there would be an owner. And if the person runs off, then the owner could just turn off the colored coin and say, no more. And obviously NFTs, it was an NFT, but Ethereum really made that big. For some reason, it was Ethereum that made that big.
So the NFT idea is way bigger than just a piece of art, because what you were just referencing is the idea of, like, let's say I'm going to Airbnb this house. I could get that as an NFT and then pass that NFT to the next person who Airbnbs that house. So we may see a big revolution in Turo, Airbnb, and these kinds of companies that are renting out cars, spaces, bicycles, whatever it is, because you just get the NFT and then you take that NFT and you pass it along to the next person rather than go through the normal software that's used today. Is that correct?
Yeah, that can definitely happen, but one has to ask themselves, is that needed? Is a decentralized network needed? Now, the reason why you want a decentralized network is because the government doesn't like what you're doing in a certain geographical region, right? If you have a fleet of cars or Airbnb, maybe it's just better that a centralized authority has everything there, and it's just more efficient, really. Now, saying that for Airbnb, that doesn't make sense, because I wouldn't want a centralized unit having all the keys to all the houses everywhere. So maybe for Airbnb, it does make sense because people really do control the keys and there's not one honeypot to hack. So yeah, you're right. So it's not the only use case if the government wants to shut it down, but it's a vast majority of use cases. But also NFTs are very, very interesting. We're using NFTs in the standard.io as an interesting use case for debt. So what we're building is actually,
hold on. Before we get there, for everyone who's listening, what you're going to hear here is just so awesome and so innovative. And I think really it's kind of a crowning achievement of our generation. I really feel like that, Joshua, like what you've created, especially with the standard.io. And I'll give you the links below, by the way, for everybody to check that out. It's just a whole new vista of possibilities, because it's going after the real core issue, which is, well, I'll let you explain it, but it's basically you're going to allow people to borrow money but not have to go through a bank.
Yeah, absolutely. Borrowing money from yourself. It is such a weird concept to think about, but yeah, it's fascinating. And so where do I begin?
Let's start right there with just borrowing money. I mean, the entire way that we borrow money in the Western world is we're essentially going into a bank. The bank creates the money out of nothing, and then you have to pay it back with interest. So it's basically created as a debt.
Yeah, that's right.
There's nothing backing it.
No. Plus, they can print it out of thin air, and because they ask for interest, there's more money owing than there is available, which is just totally corrupt. It's totally corrupt because it's basically a game of musical chairs with way too little chairs. And it's not just you can't sit down, it's you die, or your family doesn't eat, or this whole country starves. That's the real deal, is that this musical chairs game is sick. And
it's why we call them the banksters. Now, what you've developed is something really cool. So why would somebody want to borrow? Let's say I had one Bitcoin and I wanted to borrow that for myself. Tell us how that works with the standard, and why would I want to borrow from myself?
Yeah, so good question. So basically what you want to do is, rather than, say you want to buy a car, you've got this Bitcoin and you're like, I really want this car, but I don't want to sell my Bitcoin because it's going up in value. I think long-term it's going to be at like $1 million. Why would I sell that now at 30? So at 30 grand. So what we've developed is a smart contract where people would send in the wrapped Bitcoin. So it would be on Ethereum. So they wrap the Bitcoin, which just means it's available on Ethereum. They would send it into a smart contract and lock it. So that smart contract now has that Bitcoin locked, but you can generate, the smart contract is built to say you can generate up to 85% of the value that's locked up as a brand new stable coin That's the first stablecoin is linked to the euro, but then we'll roll out USD, British pound, Indian rupee, all of the major fiats. But the MVP, the minimum viable product, first of all, is euros. Anyway, that you borrow that euro. Now, first of all, you don't get hit with capital gains tax because you haven't sold anything. You haven't sold your Bitcoin. You've just borrowed some money. So even though you've borrowed it from yourself, you haven't begged a bank for it, and you haven't given up your private key. You control your keys. No one can touch that Bitcoin that's stuck in there. And there's more rare value backing up the fiat currency. So I always say we don't need to wait for a bank or a government to create a gold standard. We're creating our own. You can voluntarily lock up assets into a smart contract and issue yourself debt, but that's backed by your own assets. And now, so it's almost like a pawn shop without a shop, without the pawn shop. It's just you're going there and saying, I'm going to lock this up and I'm going to issue myself debt. Now you can go and buy that car with you can convert that to real euros or your dollars, or you can buy more crypto if you want, or whatever you want, right? And the Bitcoin either keeps on going up in value, or it could start going down in value. Now, the whole system is built that there always has to be, there's one single North Star rule, and that is there always has to be more value locked in the system than there is fiat stablecoin, peg stablecoin floating around. It's always more value.
So that's kind of the opposite of what we're dealing with today, isn't it? Because we don't have the gold, we don't have the silver, we don't have any assets in any bank to back up any of those loans. It's just all made up. It's all on paper. So it's kind of the opposite of that, just to make that clear.
Absolutely. It's the total opposite. It's the yin to the yang. And so let's say you've got this loan now, and you're in a bear market. You find yourself in a bear market, and you've lost your job. So you've got more value locked up there than you've borrowed. And you're like, oh, what happens actually if the value of this keeps dropping, and it crosses that what's called a collateralization ratio? What that means is that there always has to be more value than what you've borrowed, because we have to back up. We have to make sure there's more value backing what's floating around. So if it drops to like enough where the system goes, uh-oh, it's going to fall below, because we don't want to get back to this fractional reserve system. If it goes to here, basically what happens is a whole bunch of people that will buy this debt just under the market price. So they get a good deal for purchasing that and liquidating it. But they can only do that if the smart contract, the computer program, actually executes. So there's no matter how many guns any government points at these computer programs, it cannot change the rule set. The rule set is set. And so by borrowing, and let's say you did borrow some money from yourself to buy a car. Well, if you didn't have this functionality, you would have had to sell your Bitcoin anyway. So getting liquidated is just like, oh, I would have sold it anyway, but instead I had the chance to keep on saving, but borrow it from myself.
Okay, so in that situation, I would have gone out, I would have gotten the car, I still keep the car, I'm just missing the Bitcoin that was blocked up is now gone because it had to be liquidated to cover the drop in price.
That's right. That's right. You got to keep everything you borrowed. It's done and dusted. But there are three things you can do, actually, four things. What you could do is you could add more collateral. So as the price is going down, you can add more Bitcoin to that. That's dangerous because as Bitcoin price keeps on sinking, you could start to lose more Bitcoin. Eventually it could get liquidated and then you're out of luck. And I really wanted to build a system. First of all, a big thing that I want to say here is that we've made these debts 0% interest.
Oh, no usury?
No usury, because I don't want usury on the base level of a new monetary system that we're building. So you can start to pay off your real world debts by taking out loans, pay them off, and now you're paying 0% interest.
Wow. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So let's say I had a $50,000 credit card debt. I could just lock up 50,000 in Bitcoin, I could convert that to say 50,000 US dollars, or basically like a equivalent, and go and pay that debt off.
Yeah, I mean, you'd want more than 50,000 locked up,
Right.
because you want to make sure you don't get liquidated. So let's say you put in like double, just to be safe, you know. It still takes people to have savings, but I want people have to get into the mindset of saving. We have to stop getting into we have to get out of the mindset of spending as fast as you can on plastic rubbish made from China. We have to and this is why I say to people, this is actually a green technology. Once you get into crypto, you start being more green, because you don't want to just consume. You want to save, you want to hodl. And so you don't buy the crap, you save a bit longer and buy the good quality thing that's going to last a lifetime. You know,
Plus, you're not in a usury system. The usury system, I think, just from that simple example we just went over, you could see it's a treadmill, right? It's a constant treadmill, because it's musical chairs. There's only so much money out there, and you better get it, because you got to pay back more than you borrowed. And so eventually it's causing the rat race. That's my take on what's causing the whole rat race to begin with.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And here's the second thing that you can do if the bear market's hitting and you're getting close to liquidation. So you can either add more collateral, you can pay off the debt, so that, you know, the ratio drops again because you've already paid some off. Or, and this is really something that we're innovating massively, is that you can sell your debt as an NFT to somebody that's willing to buy it. So you've lost your job, you cannot pay it back, it's about to get liquidated, you're like, at least I can recover something. So you can sell that as an NFT. So NFTs don't need to be artwork, pictures of monkeys. They are just tokens that can be followed around, that are non-fungible. They're unique. They're unique. You know, money can't be unique. Gold is not unique. You melt down any 2 bars of gold, if they're pure, they'll be the same. You can't tell the difference. And that's what Bitcoin tries to be, but especially Monero tries to be, absolutely. But
so I would be buying debt. Let's say I was really wealthy and I was like, okay, I'm going to buy these debts as NFTs. I'm doing that because I'm expecting a bull market. I'm expecting the market to grow and then my value is increased. Or what would be the reason why I'd want to buy that debt up?
Well, you're effectively buying the collateral because you would buy it at slightly under market value. So you could then buy it and basically pay the debt off, and all of a sudden you've bought Bitcoin for cheaper than, like, maybe 15% under market value, or 10% or 5%, whatever the market decides, you know. So not only that, in 2008, we all remember the massive global apparent liquidity crunch that the banks went through. Who knows what actually went on there? I've actually heard some stories that it was actually that they were passing laws about shutting down bank accounts of major cartels out of Mexico that were using money law. And the cartels went, oh yeah, you want to play that game? We're going to shut off liquidity. So the liquidity just stopped. And the banks were so highly leveraged that the only liquidity they had in the system was the black money coming out of the cartel system.
I've heard that before. That's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard that before. And that's a big part of this whole money laundering system, is that the drug money is liquid. It's easy to actually, like, there it is. You have it in hand. Interesting. Right. That's not the first time I've heard that. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But imagine, anyway, let's take the official story, that there was all this subprime mortgages locked up. And what they would do is they take these debts, and it's effectively the same thing that we've created here, except it's voluntary and you control the key. It was these debts. So right now, these smart vaults that we're creating, and you lock it up and you issue yourself debt. This is what's in the traditional financial world called a CDP, a collateralized debt position. It's a collateralized debt position. You've got collateral in there and you've got a debt. So what they had was all these CDPs, these collateralized debt positions. They had all these subprime mortgages in them, and the banks would sell them on to other banks who would say, look, these things, when you own them, these people are paying interest, you get a good yield and it's great. So these banks would take that, cut it again, mix it with all sorts of other stuff, and then send that off to a third bank, who would then rate the rating agency, who goes, still A+, And they would go on bank after bank, cutting and splicing and changing, and no one knew what was in this. No one knew what was in these CDPs, right? So you just had to trust the bank, say, okay, the rating agency says it's A+, whatever's in this, this debt. We don't know. But imagine if they were all NFTs, you could run a computer program and say, okay, well, what's in here? And it will go, boop, 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 boop. Okay, well, there's 15 houses that are in this region and they're paying back their loans pretty well. And, you can actually do something instead of some paper trail, which is corruptly hidden behind certain ways because banks and all the rest of that stuff. But, obviously we don't want a world where everything's followable and trackable. What you want, though, is transparency for the wealthy and powerful, and privacy for the weak. And really, this is key to cypherpunk terminology and life and philosophy is that exact term: transparency for the powerful, privacy for the weak. And so this is where we're heading. But yeah, so the NFT thing is really interesting because it stops NFTs just being art and starts to bring it out into the real world. Imagine what people, because it's an open source thing, anyone can grab those and maybe make other products where they can take that debt. And I don't know what people will do with that, but we're building it, and it's all private and voluntary. There's no there's no bank controlling all of this. It's basically code on the blockchain.
That's so amazing right there. So, what happened to me one time, this is back in 2008. And it was actually, no, it was later than that. It happened around 2014. After all that stuff went down, they passed some laws in California, as I found out, where they could just steal your account if they thought you owed them money. This is the state of California. And so one day, on a Monday, I went in, there was no money in my account. And I was like, somebody hacked my account. I went into the bank 2 hours later, realized, oh, the state of California has passed a law so they can just grab whatever's in your account if they just think that you owe them money. Yeah. This kind of business is basically, this is what we're avoiding. This is why we need transparency for the big guys. And this is why we need privacy for the little guys, is because the big guys, the government can just say, oh, we're just stealing that. There's nothing you can do about it. And CBDCs make that very easy to do. Obviously, all these debt instruments that they sold with God knows how many mortgages were in there, where those mortgages were, or even if they were legitimate mortgages, all of that stuff is wiped out by this idea, which is everything is an NFT. It's all digitally tracked. And if you want to drill down, it's all there. Now, I want to get into, with the standard.io, like, when is this going to be available? And then it's, you mentioned it's going to roll out as a euro first. So people in Europe are going to be able to do it first, or anywhere in the world, but you're only going to be able to convert from, say, let's say I want to lock up Bitcoin or Ethereum. I can only convert to euro first, and then soon I'll have the ability to go to dollars or the ability to go to any other currency around the world.
Yeah. So first euros but anybody around the world can participate. It's a smart contract. There's no KYC. People are interacting with the computer program that's sitting in the blockchain.
So no one can say you can't get this loan.
No, I mean, this is the whole point of Bitcoin, was like that. Bitcoin was all about banking the unbanked. It was all about allowing anybody to participate in what's a normal human right. And that is the ability to trade cross borders without begging permission. Of course, you don't do illegal stuff, and illegal stuff needs to be hit by good old fashioned police work. We have to stop this idea of, we have to follow the money for everything. Follow the money is a very new concept, actually. And just take the money out of David's bank account is like next level new. Right? This is all very, very new stuff. And it's going to get worse. I mean, these CBDCs, if they decide all of a sudden that there's a currency problem and there's major issues, we have to stimulate the economy. We're going to put a time limit on money before it expires, so you can't save anymore. They're already trying this in China. So you've got 1 month to spend your money, otherwise it expires. The next thing they say is, we've got such a problem in the world that you're not allowed to grow your own food. And you're not allowed to because we need to stimulate the economy. Who's going to, why Bob, the grocery is going to suffer if you grow your own food. So if you're found doing that, then we're just going to cut your bank account. Or stop, oh, we got to stop people eating meat. So this currency doesn't work with meat. Oh, if you've got special privileges because you've done something really good, then your currency might work with eating, buying some meat. And so this sort of stuff, this control of behavior is obsessive by humans. This is nothing new. You can look through the history, the pages of history are littered with absolute megalomaniacal despots that want to control.
Are you suggesting that these people are control freaks? Well, it's so interesting that they are control freaks. It's fascinating. Like, why is that? Like, they have control issues. They have to control everything. They have to make sure everything is under their control. I mean, says who? Why? What is this about? So I find that to be an interesting aspect of the insight of, like, why are we dealing with this? What is it about humans that there's control issues in particular? Now, when you're dealing with, let's say you're dealing with Bitcoin or Ethereum, and I just want to take people just a little bit into Monero, because you mentioned that just a minute ago. Bitcoin is on a public blockchain. People can see where it's going, where it's moving. Ethereum's on a public blockchain. People can see where it's moving, but Monero isn't. And so is it possible that someone could put Monero into the standard.io and then borrow against the Monero and make it even more encrypted and more difficult to know what's going on?
It can definitely be, it's definitely possible. We can, the only thing is it would have to be wrapped Monero, because it has to be on the Ethereum blockchain. But there's a lot of work, and Tornado Cash was actually the first step to having privacy on Ethereum. And we all saw what happened there. And if you didn't see what happened there, basically the world police took down that. The Americans then made any wallet that dealt with Tornado Cash in the last X months, put it on a blacklist, like a sanctions list. Major infrastructure around the crypto world went along with that, because they don't want to lose their licenses. And basically you had an absolute shit fight on your hands. The thing is that what happened there, which was really fascinating, is you had all these cypherpunks take tiny bits of dust, and dust is like tiny bits of, one Bitcoin's got 8 decimal points. And so you take like a tiny bit of Ethereum and you just dust all around to major wallets. And what happened was, all of a sudden, all of these major wallets wouldn't work anymore because they were tied to what went through Tornado Cash. So they were like corrupting all of these wallets to say, see, because you can't. It's a push technology,
That's called a dust attack. Am I correct about that?
That's correct. Yeah.
And so what happens is suddenly you see like 1/8 or 1/10 or 1/1,000,000th or whatever of a Bitcoin suddenly in your wallet, and you're like, hey, what's going on there? Tell us how that works real quickly. Suddenly something will show up in your wallet, so they'll dust you, meaning they'll throw a little bit at you. Then what happens?
Well, yeah. So basically, if that dust comes from a banned address, then your wallet could be like, oh, well, banned, and then you have to like go through reasons why, and like, look, and there are protocols in place. I went onto the Treasury website the other day just to have a look, and it said, if you have been dusted, then go through these steps, but you still need to like KYC and tell them where you got your Bitcoin from and all this stuff that doesn't belong anywhere near them. But anyway, it's these are interesting conundrums. And one of the major things that we need to think about is all of this. I mean, Bitcoin and the crypto network is built to be what's called anti-fragile. And what that means is there might be an attack, like something happens, crack, a whole bunch of people suffer. There's an attack by something. All that happens is that people learn, the network learns. The network gets upgraded to defeat that attack next time. So every time there's an attack, the network learns and adjusts and builds better. And, if we're thinking about, and why I've always been bullish on this stuff is, look at what we're building. We're building a way to borrow money from yourself at 0 interest with no time limit to pay it off. And what do you think is going to happen to liquidity in the real world? All the liquidity is going to come into DeFi. It's not sticking around out there. It's not dumb. It's not going to go, I could get like, 0.1% interest here, but if I move all my liquidity into DeFi, hey,
it's 0%.
Well, if you're borrowing at 0%, if you're actually using the liquidity to earn, like traditionally you put money in a bank and
you'd earn interest.
You earn interest, but where does that interest comes from? Well, it comes from the fact that the bank will give that money to a third party. The third party will give it to another fund manager. The fund manager will play with it and mix it and deal with it. We'll bring it to a market maker. The market maker will put it and speculate on it, make markets, hopefully make a reward and make a win, and then pass a little bit of a cut. Everyone takes the cut all the way back to little old you sitting there, and you get your 0.1% interest, which doesn't even cover the monthly fees. And instead, in DeFi, you take your liquidity, you put it into a automated market maker robot, and say, market make for me at the exact specifications I want, and pay me directly. But why would you sit with that legacy system?
Right. You're not going to go to after you get a DeFi system set up like that. And there are many set up everybody already like that, meaning that you can earn a lot more interest on your money than you're currently ever going to get from a bank. That's for sure. We call that DeFi, which is decentralized finance for people who are new to that term. And you're right. The money's going to move into DeFi. It's automatic. Now let's keep going on this, because this is such a cool idea. When you're earning interest, for example, on your DeFi investment, is there a part of what you're doing with the standard that is participating in that? You know, like if I go to PancakeSwap, or if I go to one of these DeFi sites, I can have fun and I can, put up some cake and get some, great interest rates and that kind of thing. Is that going to be part of what you do with the standard as well?
Yeah, that's how we are launching the initial S-Euro launch, and this is how we're launching. This is how we're going to be launching new stable coins as we bring them online. Is as such. How do we offer 0% interest to how do you peg? So the S-Euro, it's just another token. How do you make sure that token sticks to €1? And by the way, I don't know, maybe I don't want to confuse things, but by the way, the other great thing about having debt, and this is what the wealthy have always used, in hyperinflationary times or inflationary times in general, you want to get into debt because the inflation is paying off your debt. But the plebs have always suffered because the banks have then restructured the debt once there's a total collapse, and they've just said, well, you've got the same debt now, just in the new currency. Whereas the wealthy know their bank managers have a lot more collateral, could make special deals to say, I want a contract, I want a debt for 100 different houses, but I want them that they're not renegotiable, and it's a fixed interest, so you can't just get me when this inflation hits. So they would buy all these houses, and then 10 years later, they've basically bought everything for a carton of milk, because now the same amount of money buys a carton of milk. This is how hyperinflation works. So by borrowing at 0% interest, you can also let inflation work for you. But anyway, how do you peg a dollar? Meaning, how do you get one?
Yeah, because if I'm going to borrow money in the standard, just for everyone so they're clear about this, if I go into the standard, I'm like, okay, I'm going to put a Bitcoin in, I'm going to get S-Euro out, which is a stable coin that's pegged to the euro, because I'm going to be spending euros to buy that car or whatever. That's what we're talking about. How do you peg that? What do you do to keep that euro the same value as the S-Euro?
Yeah. So how do you make something peg, right? So some other places, they manipulate interest rates. They say, oh, it's going down, let's lift interest rates. That causes people to buy it up. And what we do is we say, we're going to build a big pool of liquidity. And that liquidity pool always is called a stability pool. It always buys back at just near 1. So it'll be like 100 basis points each. Let's just say 1. So it'll always buy and sell at €1. So €1 worth of Ethereum or Bitcoin or something you can get out of this pool. So if you have 1 S-Euro, you can always buy 1 of Bitcoin. It'll be like a tiny little spread on there. But that's effectively what it is. So how do we build that? How do we launch that? So what we're doing is we're launching what's called an initial minting event, or initial bonding curve offering is the technical term for it. What that is that we have a pool, and the curve, it's called a curve or discount curve because it's starting at 80%, 80 cents to the euro. So the first people that help the protocol grow get the first S euro at 80 cents. So it's an instant 20% gain for them. And
so instead of like €1, boom, 80 cents. It's 20 cents delta, 20 cents gain.
That's right.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So this is called yield farming in the space, and I've seen you do it with PancakeSwap and stuff. But this is a lot more sort of serious. It hasn't got the funny names. It's just like trying to build a serious product. Now, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at a pool, and the more liquidity that goes in, the less that discount becomes. So as more and more liquidity fills up this pool, this discount will go from 80 cents to maybe 81, 82, 83, all the way to 1-to-1. As soon as that's 1-to-1, now it's a stable coin. Before that, no one's gonna give you €1 for your S euro at that point, because why would they buy that when they can come to the IBCO, the initial launch event, and buy it for 80 cents, right?
Right, instead of one, right?
Instead of, yeah, right.
Okay, so real quick for everybody, just because Joshua's building this technology, you don't need to worry about this technology when you're on the standard.io, if you're using that system that he's developing. But these are the problems that you face as a developer, as a programmer, as a financial analyst, right? You're giving us the bones of like, how does this thing actually work? So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody, because if some people are going like, I don't understand that, don't worry, you don't have to. This is Joshua's job. He's teaching us how he's understanding it.
Look, money is like cars, is like sofas, it's like TVs, like anything else. It's a thing, and that's why if you imagine a certain sofa, right? A sofa becomes super popular, and the sofa company goes, "Wow, these sofas are popular. We're going to make billions of them." What would happen? Well, those sofas would everyone would go, "Oh, everyone's got one of those. I guess I'll buy one if it's like $1." And that's why the sofa loses value, because the sofa company is just printing more of these things, let's say. And that's exactly like money. If you print too much, it loses value. And so if you think about what we're doing with the initial launch, it's the same as buying anything at a discount. Hey, would you go to a jeans store if it was 20% off for your favorite jeans? Yeah, great. But so this is basically what we're doing, is we have 20% off of the first stable coins. And as more and more people buy them, the discount becomes less and less until it reaches 1. So what can you do? Well, excuse me. What can you do once you've got S euro? Well, what we're doing now is to say, okay, now we need to build more liquidity. Because if you remember at the start, our goal is to always have more value locked up than S euro floating around, right? And with this discount, well, guess what? Because everyone's paid less for a euro, there's going to be less locked up than euros floating around. So what the protocol needs to quickly do is get people to insert that S euro, basically sell it back to us into a liquidity pool like Uniswap. So what we do for those, and we make it super easy. This is super confusing just listening to it like this, but what
it'll just be a couple clicks, right? When you're looking at a screen. So you're going to have a DeFi site that takes that S euro, and then go ahead and tell us that this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm excited
about it. So you basically take that S euro, which is only worth 80 cents, but we're the only place that will give you €1 worth of value for that instantly. And what you do then is you take, let's say you've put $100 worth of Ethereum in. Now you've got 120 euros. Let's say, let's stick with euros. You put 100 euros in worth of Ethereum. Now you've got 120 euros worth of S euro, and you use that with some USDT and you bond it. You sell that to us, and we give you then a yield on that, like a 10%, 20% yield on that as well. But you just have to lock it up for like 7 days, 10 days, 30 days, 60 days. The longer you lock it,
the better deal you get.
Better deal, yeah. And you get paid back in the governance membership token of this whole protocol. Now, why do people want the governance token, the membership token? This membership token is
which is it TST? What's the membership token? TST. I'll put this in the show notes, everybody.
Yeah, it's called the standard token.
Yeah.
Now, the standard, when we don't have interest when people take out loans, but they do pay a small fee that when they first initially open the vault. So let's say they mint $1,000 debt to themselves, let's say, they would pay maybe a 1% fee, and that's it. So there's no interest, but there's like a fee. Now that fee goes to the treasury of the entire DAO, which is the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. It's the organization of all sorts of people that hold the governance token. But that fee gets dropped to anyone holding the governance token. So imagine if you could get paid a small percentage of every single loan in every single currency around the world, paying a small fee to open a debt. And these people are paying off real world debt like mortgages and stuff. And think about the amount of value that's dropping onto TST. This is why you definitely want to hold TST, is that when you stake that, you do a bit of work for receiving those rewards. And this is it's a really interesting mechanism. And you also be able to buy assets if they're being liquidated, like we mentioned liquidations before. So these are called the smart vaults. So first we have the initial launch period with this mechanism that I talked about with the discount and stuff like that. And straight after that, the second phase of this whole rollout is these private vaults, which we talked about in the beginning, of people locking up their own assets and borrowing against them.
Yeah.
And so it's a quite a complex system just to talk about like that. But basically, in a nutshell, it's all rolling out in two phases. One phase is the initial bonding curve offering, which is this discount that people build the liquidity, they get the first stable coins out into the wild, and then they add that liquidity. The second phase then is these private smart vaults. We're launching that directly after to allow people then to lock up these assets, issue themselves debt, maybe sell it as an NFT if they don't want to pay it back, or if they can't. All of this good stuff. So they're the two phases that it's happening.
Okay, so the second phase is really probably where most people are going to understand it, because the first phase seems to be more for the crypto, the skilled crypto analyst and researcher. The second phase is kind of more easy. It's like, hey, wait a second, I've got 10,000 owed on this car. I've got $30,000 in Bitcoin. I could say put, I don't know, $12,500 worth of Bitcoin into the standard, and then issue myself euro 10,000 euros or dollars, whatever it is, and then pay that off, and then I'm off their interest payment.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to pay more interest. And by the way, if you get euro, you can also just trade that on Uniswap over to USDT or to some other US equivalent, right? So it's just we needed to choose something first, and the US market was already so saturated with stablecoins. We're like, Europe needs a stablecoin like that's decentralized, and so that's why we're choosing that as the first. But we'll be rolling out USD stablecoins very, very quickly after that too.
Okay, awesome. So when is the rollout? Give us the timeline.
So it's kind of a soft. The whole IBCO launches on the 28th of November. Basically the best thing to do is just go into the standard.io and jump on the wait list there, chuck your email in, and we'll keep you up to date. We throw out a weekly email with everything that we're doing, the partnerships that we're building. We've got some of the best partnerships, Avo, like these are NFT marketplaces, they're liquidity miners. There's also like real world things like invoices that are being paid, so you can start to invoice. And this is one thing we're noticing, and this is why we're going to release every single, like a mirror to every major fiat, is that as people as they start attacking these edges, the Coinbase where you buy and sell into the crypto, these on-ramps and off-ramps, people just want to invoice. They work online, they invoice online, but they want to invoice in their local currency. because otherwise there's like wholesale, their accountants start murdering them because it's like,
Right,
what,
because
you
they're
got
getting paid in
invoice?
Bitcoin Cash or something, and it's just a lot
Yeah,
easier to just be paid in like a stable coin that's a euro or something.
yeah, or that's pegged to your local you know, shit coin. I was your local you know,
Fiat.
coin, fiat, you know. Yeah, so it's really it's a rollout plan. It's a while, but I would say it's very, very worthwhile for the listeners to learn about the launch mechanism, because this is what we call yield farming. It's quite easy. It sounds complex. It's quite easy to do. It's literally a few clicks and you see what you're getting. You know,
I
it's
learned I learned farming, yield farming, pools, liquidity pools. I learned all that, Joshua. It just late at night, just trying to figure it out with no teacher. And it wasn't that hard. I have to say, it was not that hard. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get going on it, but you need somebody to kind of push you. And that was Morpheus for me. He kind of pushed me, like, just jump in. And
yeah.
eventually when I leapt, the net appeared. Just so everyone out there, it's like anything else. It's relatively simple once you just start playing with it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you know, the whole crypto space makes it a little bit tricky in that it's always, you know, weird names like cake and pancake swap. And so it's kind of, you just have to put that aside and go, okay, I'm going to just sort of accept that it's weird. You know, why we're called the standard is we want to become the standard in stablecoin issuance. And B, you know, it's an old throwback to the gold standard. The gold standard was the government holding more value in gold and issuing paper fiat against that, paper debt against that gold. And so a lot of gold bugs, they really I don't know, they pine for this gold standard back. They want it back, you know. They sort of really want the gold standard. Please give us this gold standard. It's like, what? Why do we need? You know, Buckminster Fuller, the beautiful quote from him is, you don't need to beg for change. We don't need to fight the existing system. We just build something new and leave the old to be obsolete. And this is really what the cypherpunks that invented Bitcoin really were all about. Like, we don't need to be standing there saying 99% at Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, and throwing, I don't know, cans of soup at great paintings. We can, you know, we can actually just make it, just build something better. Don't worry about it anymore. And that's really key, especially that we're heading towards this absolutely tyrannical and Orwellian future of CBDCs. And not only heading towards it, we're sort of, a lot of people, they're chanting it on there. They can't wait. Even in the crypto industry, they're like, yeah, it'll mean mass adoption for crypto. It's a complete nightmare. And that's especially for the poor, because the poor will have all their benefits linked to social credit scores. Suddenly your QR code will turn red and you can't move anymore. You can't get those social benefits. Oh, you're not vaccinated. Oh, sorry, you don't get that. You can't buy anything anywhere. You know, this, all this sort of stuff is really Stasi 2.0. It's the next level of what East Germany went through after during the Cold War. You know, so yeah,
I don't know. I kind of feel like this is the last gasp of evil, in the sense that this is their biggest move they've ever made in the world. They probably will never make a bigger move than this. If we defeat them at this turn in history, that they will never be this strong again. People will wisen up to their strategies. And that's really basically what I think Rudolf Steiner is saying. Is he's basically saying, like, because his students were always asking, you know, what's good, how's the future going to look at us, you know, the 20th century and the 21st century. And he said, they're going to look at you and they're going to know what not to do. They're going to look at all the mistakes. And so we're ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the curve type of person, right? You're an innovator. You're charging into new territory. And so because of that, you know, you actually, to me, represent, you know, we learn the lessons. We're moving forward. Let's get on with it. it's go time, and that's
Yeah.
really cool. And that's why I want everyone to get involved, everybody. So just go to the standard.io, get on the email list, and just start to learn, start to figure this out. Because again, you're probably using a credit card, you're probably paying a mortgage, you're probably paying your car off. Those are all interest payments, you guys. You're paying interest. You could wipe that out in one go with just a little clever strategy here developed by the standard.io.
Yeah, thank you so much. And remember, it's not us holding your value like we saw at Celsius, which was a big sort of thing that went down where people
That's like
trusted
banking, right? Because you're not
Yeah.
holding it. You're not a bank.
No, there's no one, there's no custodian. We don't have any, it's basically you get the smart contract. You have the key. The only time where you might not have the key if it falls below collateral, and then it just automatically executes to people wanting to buy that. But we as developers, we don't have access to anything. We can cryptographically never touch your savings. All we can do is say to you, hey, here's some ability and what you can do. Oh, I forgot one key aspect that we're building as well. And this is really key for the gold bugs out there. If you've locked up a whole bunch of debt, you can tell the smart vault to actually convert the collateral. Let's say it's in Ethereum, you can tell it to convert automatically to swap the collateral to a tokenized gold if Ethereum's tanking too fast. So that you can say, hey, it's tanking, it's too stressful, I can't afford to keep paying, or I don't want to sell it as an NFT. I'm just going to switch it to tokenized gold. So inside the collateral sells over to a tokenized gold with the same amount of value. Now all of a sudden you're still in two rare assets. Instead of a rare number, you're in a rare metal. And they're similar on train tracks, but they're slightly different. Ethereum's doing this, gold's maybe doing this in terms of volatility. So you can try to not get liquidated like that. But this whole thing of backing the new global currency that's voluntarily backed by not only rare numbers but rare metals, for me is such a glorious invention.
It's glorious, fantastic. Now, for everybody, who doesn't know you yet, you're going to know Joshua soon, because this is going to innovate for all of us, and it's a major part of the solution for all of us going forward. Ultimately, it's going to come down to this maneuver by the banksters to get you into social credit score, to get you in the CBDCs, to get you control of all of your resources, so that they can go, you don't get that. Nah, we don't like that you did this. You're not going to do that. With this, you're getting freedom, and so it's a new thing. I know it's different than what you've probably ever heard before, but it's not that hard to learn. I've felt like I learned it very quickly, and I'm driven because I'm driven to freedom.
Man, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's really, that's my driving force too, is to build systems that remove this control. And for those that don't know, I came from I built one of the first exchanges in the space. And I built the exchange that was the most radically transparent. So anybody could audit Vaultoria, and it was the first exchange to do Bitcoin and physical gold trades. So anyone could trade between Bitcoin and physical gold. And not only that, we were the first exchange also to implement the Lightning Network on Bitcoin. So people could do instant transactions and wouldn't have to trust us as holders. They could say, oh, I want that price, and just send Lightning transaction, boom, and it would grab it. So all this stuff, we're constantly innovating, and we're ahead of the curve. But this is, for me, a real passion point, because I see us as a precipice that we're heading towards a crossroads, and we need the tools in place to say, look, you guys do that. There's an exit door here. If without an exit door, we have to go through that door. And so it's really imperative that that not only my project and our project here, but support open source, good, solid projects. Don't just, make sure there's so many scams out there. So make sure you don't fall for those, and learn about this stuff first. But, make sure that that we need to support people building in this space, because otherwise there's no exit door. And we're, obviously you can live in a community and you can start trading shells, but it's very inconvenient compared to a global marketplace that can be, anywhere, anytime, as a bearer-based asset. Very, 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 very important.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to explain the standard.io and Vaultoro too. I'll put that link as well. That's a current site that you run that you really developed a lot of innovative technology there as well. I use Vaultoro. I think it's an awesome site. And just for everyone out there, I think that what we're learning here is that we're being led down where there's no exit, right? So we've got to make sure we have that exit door. And when you're trusting someone, you have to know who they are. And so you just got to look at Joshua. You get to see who he is and what this is about. So you get to know, like, okay, I can trust this technology, because a lot of these sites, I mean, who's behind these tokens? Who's behind the site? If you don't know, and a friend of mine is a major crypto investor and he's a major teacher for me. He says, I don't invest in anything unless I know who's behind it or have read up on the person and can get to that person or watch that person. Otherwise, it's likely to be trouble.
Yeah, no, spot on. And we've known each other for years. I was back when you were raving about raw foodism and no one was into it. It was like it was so rare to find people that were into it. We were there, as raw vegans, and it's amazing seeing that the world now it's totally mainstream. Cacao now is mainstream. You literally wrote the book on cacao back then, and wow, there it is, there it is. And superfoods in general. You really were the renaissance of superfoods in the early 2000s and even late 90s. You were on about this stuff, and so I want to thank you as well, Dave, for all your amazing hard work, your tireless hard work in really helping people in discovering their own power and their own health, and basically, things like earthing. Earthing it's so unbelievably easy and so powerful. There it is.
There it is.
And you really brought that to the mainstream. It was you, Abel, and that's what for me was so special, to be in touch with you again, because seeing someone so innovative, someone that brings true change to people's lives, also stepping into the side of life which makes a lot of people uncomfortable, which is the financial side of life, is really extraordinary and wonderful. And I'm honored.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, Joshua Scigala, everybody. I'll put all his information in the show notes. You'll see his new website, thestandard.io, and of course, Vaultoro. You'll get that as well. And some of the notes from the show will be there as well. Anyway, thanks so much for your time. I know you've got a call coming.
Yep.
It's election day, everybody. Have the best day ever. Cheers.